was just a boy, I would think about the day when I leave this town and set out for the shining lights that never let me down. So I got on a ship with 22 bucks and a searching soul. I'm going to the promised land where streets are paved with gold.
Welcome to Hometown Chronicles USA, the podcast where every small town and city across the nation has a story to tell. Join us as we uncover the rich tapestry of America's historic sites, weaving together the echoes of the past with the vibrancy of present-day happenings. From forgotten landmarks to bustling community events, we dive deep into the people who shape their hometowns, those who have been pivotal in building their community's legacy, and those carrying it boldly into the future. Each episode celebrates the resilience, culture, and spirit of these local stories, highlighting the unique heartbeat of every corner of the country. Whether it's a historic main street, a thriving local business, or a tradition passed down through generations, Hometown Chronicles USA brings you closer to the places that make America extraordinary, one community at a time.
But when I set foot on that newfound ground, I could feel the truth. I could be a shining.
What's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in. It is Murph and Kyle back at you one more time. And, we were originally supposed to have a guest today, but unfortunately that guest is sick. So Cal and I are going to run the show today, which is cool because we like talking to each other. So that works in partnership, right?
Works for me.
A little bit. Yeah, it works for me too. And today we're going to be talking about national parks. Both of us, I think that one of the things that kind of gels our friendships is the love for so many different things. History is one thing, of course, being family guys is another, community advocates is another, but also our love for the outdoors. And, we've been planning various different hikes and things like that, and we were only able to get one in, and it really wasn't a hike. We were at Pixa National Forest,
Pisgah.
which is right outside. Pisgah.
Yep.
I keep saying.
Yeah, we hiked around town too.
Yeah, and around town. Yeah. But the places in which he and I love, as well as millions of people across the country love the most, are unfortunately under threat with the reduction of staff. And I don't think that people understand how important park rangers are, medical staff at these places, and just the whole umbrella of what makes that ecosystem work and make it safe for people to come to national parks and just enjoy it, right? And so that's the conversation that we're going to have today, is our love for the outdoors and these national parks, and what's happening right now, and how it's, of course, negatively affecting everything around us.
Yeah, that's right. So, Murph, how many of the national parks have you been able to make it out to? Many?
Yeah, many. And to be honest with you, some of these national parks I didn't even know were national parks.
That's right.
Because they were like historic sites, like the St. Louis Arch. I didn't know that was a national park. The Paul Dunbar House, who was a poet, I didn't know that was. Medgar Evers' home in Mississippi, I didn't know that was part of the national park system. And now these are, of course, buildings. And so, but, outdoors, plenty as well. But it's been so many. And I think that so many people may not even understand that they're actually on the grounds of a national park.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in Southwest Florida, and I spent a lot of time driving through the Everglades. And you're not necessarily driving through the Everglades saying like, oh, hey, this is the Everglades National Park, but it is. They designate a lot of these places as national parks so they can fund them, so that they can protect them. I know specifically with the Everglades, it's an extremely unique natural resource that we have. Mm-hmm. So it needs to be protected. If it's not, then, like everything that we have here, it will be open to just various types of destruction.
Mm-hmm.
So recently, I think what we're really hinting at was the plan to fire. I've seen anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 or more national parks workers, park rangers, specifically park rangers that had been working at their position for a year or less. They were on a, let's say, like a probationary period. And these are people that are extremely dedicated to what they do. They're doing it out of just nothing but love. Many of them have worked, spent years in seasonal positions or other part-time positions just to earn the opportunity to gain one of these coveted full-time positions so they can make under $40,000 a year working in the national parks to preserve them, to protect them. Some of the services that they offer include keeping the parks clean, helping visitors, educating visitors, finding people who get lost in the national parks.
That's important. That's important.
They provide medical assistance to people who need medical assistance. They provide fire service. They keep the trails clear so people can navigate through them. They keep the forests clear.
They teach classes.
I mean, just so many things
everything.
to conserve, right? Which the irony is, our conservative wing of our government is the one that wants to get rid of these things, but they're there to conserve these parks. And so they lost a lot of them. They lost a lot of those workers when that was announced, and the repercussions were instant. I pulled up a couple of these pictures from various different national parks. Saguaro National Park says effective February 24th, 2025. Visitor centers in both districts will be closed on Mondays until further notice. We regret any inconvenience. So obviously the park is open. You can still get in and out of the park, but you can't go to the visitor center. You can't go through any of the educational resources. This isn't a national park, but the Mountains to Sound Greenway closed off a section. They posted a picture that says trailheads are closed. This will reopen when we return to appropriate staffing levels. And so that's a greenway out in Seattle. You got Cane River Creole Nation saying alert, there will be no guided tour of Magnolia Plantation on February 22nd. The grounds and outbuildings will be open for self-guided tours from 9 to 3:30. You've got the National Parks Conservation Association, the NPCA, who says, speaking to New York Times about the impact of new Park Service job cuts on visitor experiences, NPCA's Kristen Bringle said, if you've planned a bucket list trip to a national park, you have to take into consideration that you won't have the full experience.
Yeah. And that's one of the first things that I do when I go to, I go to the visitor center, or the welcome center, because for one, at some of these national parks, and I'm talking about like the ones that are outdoors, right? There's just a lot of dangers that are there. Right. And so to be able to get that type of guidance, especially if you have people who are on various different expertise levels on how to hike these things or to be prepared of certain types of animals and those types of things, you kind of need
what trails to go on. What to expect when you're on them.
Absolutely.
When we visited Yosemite 2 years ago, we stopped at the visitor center and we asked the national park ranger there. We told them what our experience hiking was, where we were from, what our experience with altitude was, and they recommended the best hikes for us based off of our experience. And they kept us off of trails that we had no business being on, quite frankly. Without that, you are just going to get people to say, this is America. I can do what I want, where I want, how I want. And they're going to go on trails they have no business being on. And once they get there, they're going to have nobody there to help them.
Most definitely. And not only the people, but these rangers are also there to protect the animals and just the wildlife in general, right? The plants, right? And so recently there was a U.S. flag was hanged upside down in protest at Yosemite at El Capitan. And I didn't know this, El Capitan. So it says that the flag was hung on top of the famed El Capitan summit of 3,000-foot vertical rock formation in Mariposa County, California on Saturday evening by a group of unset Yosemite employees. And an upside American flag is traditionally a sign of dire distress, according to the United States Flag Code. And that's exactly what this is, right? Like, it affects so much more than just people's money, right?
Right.
And that's obviously a huge thing. I mean, I equate the salaries that they earn as the same of teachers and people that are in human services who don't make the amount of cash that they should be making to make sure that everyone is safe or everyone is able to function under the auspice of wellness with the guidance of someone if needed. And so to have that flag hung upside down is of course an act of protest, and there has to be more of that in these spaces that are meant to educate our young folks as well as middle-aged and older folks as well. Because again, the National Park Service, the whole operation is a huge operation. A lot of people hear the word parks and they just think that it's something that's outside, and that's just not the case. Right. They're buildings as well, and Abraham Lincoln's birthplace is a National Historic Park, right? So we're talking now presidential history. Places that the Civil War was fought at is part of this system. Fort Sumter and Fort Moultrie is a National Historic Park down in South Carolina. Again, the Gateway Arch in St. Louis that everyone in this country knows, right? That arch is part of it as well. And so this is big. It's going to affect so many people's summer travels. Like I mentioned to you, I planned on being outside all summer because it's probably what we can afford.
That's what I need right now.
And what we need. But it's just negatively affected. And you just kind of hate to see, you hate to see it in the manner in which we're seeing it.
Yeah. Now, I think to the point that you were making, is that, with that protest at El Capitan with the American flag being hung in distress, we do have a news item that came up about 4 days ago. So we're recording this February 25th. So we're not a breaking news podcast.
No.
we're not here to report as quickly as we can on things that are happening. This issue and frankly, probably a lot more issues that are coming up here in the near future do affect what I think we both believe Hometown Chronicles USA is about, which is about, anything that just affects the lives of small town America, what we are culturally. A lot of people say that America doesn't have a culture, and I kind of resist that. We don't have a culture that's, I guess America as you think of it today doesn't have a culture that's thousands of years old. Now, people lived here thousands of years ago. We're still learning about those people and their culture. But, a lot of people want to say because we're not as established as, Europe or the Middle East with these buildings that are thousands of years old that we don't have a culture, but we do. We do have a culture, and a lot of that culture lives in our national parks.
Yes.
So,
and you're reading this. How many days ago is this one that you're about to read?
This is from the 21st. So,
okay.
4 days ago. But the point that I'm trying to make is while we are not here to cover breaking news, we will cover it in the sense when it affects what Hometown Chronicles USA is about. And we care very much about national parks because so much of our history, I think that the national parks are America's crown jewel. We find these places throughout our country that represent what makes this land so beautiful and so amazing. And so when those things become, and there's so much history in our national parks, right? I mean, that's not what this episode is about. We're not here to go through each national park and spell out what all the history is. There is a podcast that I really love that does do that. Hello, Nature. And it is hosted by Misha, I think, if I remember correctly. And she lives out in California. She didn't experience the national parks until she was a grown adult. And if you want to know more about the history of many of the deep dive history on many of the national parks, listen to her experience because she goes through and she just learns them on the fly. And she created this podcast. I think it's an REI podcast. So it's produced really well. Amazing thing. They'll go into the deep dive. What we're talking on is a very surface level current event of the fact that these national parks are being defunded. And there's also a really big issue and a reason, I think, why the national parks are under attack right now, which we'll get to here in a minute. But breaking news as of 4 days ago, they did start to restore some of or they're attempting to restore some of the jobs for people that were fired from those positions. It said this headline from the AP just says National Park Services restores some jobs of fired employees and pledges to hire 7,700 seasonal workers. So these national parks have always relied on seasonal workers as a huge part of their workforce. Seasonal workers are important. Nobody is saying that they're not. But the full-time positions that were eliminated are just as important. They need people there that are just dedicate their whole professional life to working at these parks. But the important takeaway from here is the reason why this was reversed is the Trump administration is restoring jobs for dozens of National Park Service employees fired amid government-wide reductions in hiring nearly 3,000 seasonal workers following an uproar over an aggressive plan to downsize the agency. So when we say that people, you have a voice, this is what we mean. People got so pissed off over this and made such a big deal about it that it made a difference. And even an administration that we think doesn't care at all about public image, and I would argue probably doesn't care about public image, was moved to at least reverse it. Now, this isn't actually the only time that happened. This also happened after they fired a bunch of security personnel that were tasked with protecting our nuclear facilities. So nuclear facilities and our some of our nuclear arms. Now, I'm not really ready to just issue a widespread, okay, well, we forgive you for that. It was just an overstep. It was a mistake. In the event of the nuclear facilities, they're having trouble tracking down the people that they fired just 24, 48 hours after they fired them. So they fired a bunch of people. They went off to the wind looking for new jobs, presumably. Then they realized, that was a mistake. We shouldn't have done that. Let's just offer them their positions back. Oh no, we don't know how to get in touch with them. So now they're scrambling to get in touch with them. Park rangers are going to be the same. People are going to have lost their jobs. This isn't something, we shouldn't be just letting people go so flippantly. There needs to be more than a 48-hour review of tell us 5 things you did or else you're fired. That's not the right way to go about this. And people may think, okay, well, they're just national parks. They're parks. Like, we shouldn't worry about that. But these national resources are so important. Not only are they, to Murph's point, great vacation spots for families who don't have a ton of money, which, hey, I've got news for everybody. It still costs money to visit these national parks. We spent $4,000 or $5,000 visiting Yosemite when we went, and last year we probably spent about $3,000 going to the Rocky Mountain National Park. It's not super cheap to go to them if you have them nearby, because they are part of our national and natural resources. You can access them for fairly reasonably, but people travel from all over the world
globe
to go and visit these parks. And if that wasn't a reason enough, because they're the crown jewels, because they are our birthright as Americans to have access to these natural resources, this article from the NPCA states in 2023, national parks contributed $55.6 billion to the national economy and supported 415,000 jobs in local communities. The National Park Service makes up less than 1/15 of 1% of the federal budget, but delivers a $15 boost to every a $15 boost to the nation's economy for every $1 invested. The National Park Service recently reported data that shows 325.5 million visitors spent $26.4 billion in communities near national parks. This doesn't just affect our national budget, because this money comes back to us through the parks and their different services and ticketing and all that stuff. But it also boosts the communities that surround these national parks. Without national parks, if they closed up or if they were inaccessible for even a day out of the week, that would hurt local communities in a massive, massive scale. So when we're firing national parks employees because we're saying, oh, well, this is in the name of efficiency. This is in the name of saving a few dollars, because they just on a spreadsheet look like we're paying out these park service people, and they walk around in their uniforms and teach people stuff. What do we really need that? It is so much more than that. We're talking about to the tune of billions. A $15 boost per dollar spent is what we get from the national parks. Why wouldn't we want to support those places. Why wouldn't
Yeah.
we? I mean, they are quite literally a piece of the fabric of what makes America so great. So, the NPCA in this article is calling for 1,000 jobs to be restored. They're really fighting for all of those park workers to get their jobs back. As you can see, it did help. This article was written and posted February 20th, so a day prior to the job cuts being reversed. And, it was helpful. One of the things that happens when we cut funding or when we close down the parks, or when we just don't have people there manning the parks, is they get destroyed, as happened in 2019 with Joshua Tree. I've got another article here. I remember the situation very well, but in 2019, there was a partial government shutdown again, because the bureaucrats in office can't agree with each other. They shut down our entire government, which includes our national parks, left a skeleton crew of workers in Joshua Tree. Vandals and foolish guests caused destruction to the park that experts expect to take centuries to regrow. They took their four-wheel trucks out there and they ran over Joshua trees, which those are just sensitive ecosystems.
Yeah,
they are
very
protected
much so.
by park rangers who keep you on the trail, who educate you about how your actions can negatively impact these ecosystems. And without that, negative impact happens. And now we're talking about centuries for them to regrow. And frankly, not to be a pessimist, they might not ever regrow. And especially if we're going to treat our national parks the way that we're treating them now, by defunding them, by removing workers, they just won't. They are going to need help, or at the very least, they're going to need us to abstain from being there at all. Which,
well, and with that being said, right, like looking at things from a local standpoint, and so we have 10 national parks here in North Carolina, and this is per the NPS website. So you have the Appalachian Trail, you have Blue Ridge, Cape Hatteras, you have Cape Lookout, Carl Sandburg Home, which is not too far.
I think those are national
Asheville.
Forests.
No, it has National Historic Site.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We don't have any national parks and full national parks, but these are all the same. Like,
it's all the same.
They're staffed by the same.
Yeah, they're staffed by the same. Yep. And then, so Carl Sandburg, you have Fort Raleigh and the Great Smoky Mountains and the Guilford Courthouse, and Moores Creek. And then you have Over Mountain, Victory, the Trail of Tears, the Wright Brothers, like all of these. And to your point, you're staffed by the same, right? And so for the
Park
numbers, here, $3,959,200,000 economic benefit from the national park tourism, right? And so this is via their website. And then you have money that goes towards the Land and Water Conservation Fund, 57 certified local governments, 58 community conservation and recreation projects, 3 national heritage areas, wild and scenic rivers, right? Like this is so huge as it relates to what these heroes and sheroes do on a daily basis.
Now, keep in mind, Trump promised us the cleanest water in the world.
Cleanest water in the
world. You don't get
yeah.
the cleanest water in the world
yeah.
by cutting conservation agencies whose job it is to ensure that the water is clean.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And this is another piece, right? And this is, of course, near and dear to you and I, and most of the people that have the same ideology and that just kind of follow what we do. But there's 623 archaeological sites in national parks, which is huge, especially when we talk about what life was like prior to us being here, right? Which is so important, because if we're able to learn so much about what has happened prior to us here, then we can prevent certain things that could transpire while we're here, or we're able to enhance different things from the standpoint of plants, from the standpoint of our waterways.
And we can just honor the people that were here before us.
Absolutely. Right. And so, it's just a spit in the face whenever you have these individuals who have to be let go. And this isn't just them. These are federal workers and everything else. And in the name of, to me personally, and this is just my own personal opinion, this is not the view of Hometown Chronicles USA or Cal. I just want to say that.
Well, let's see what you're going to say. Maybe it is.
Yeah, but if you're talking about saving so much money, whose wallets and whose life are you changing as it relates to the stockpile of money that you're saving? Where is the clarity in where it's going? How is this money going to be funneled right back into the National Park Service system to where it makes it better? If they're being wasteful now, if the government's being wasteful now, then how are you going to amplify their abilities to offer optimum service and have competent people to do those types of things, right? But because there's no transparency that says that, okay, we're saving this many billions and we're going to stockpile it here, but this is how we're going to regenerate it into this system. So what does that look like? That's right. And no one has that. No one has that.
So, I mean, we're cutting funding to programs like the National Park System, which we just said 15-to-1 return on investment for that. But we're not cutting funding to Elon Musk's agencies, which are only going to cost money. There's not going to be a massive 15-to-1 return on sending people to Mars. Not for a long, long time. I mean, 100 years from now, if we terraform Mars and we got a whole planet that we can now inhabit, that's a pretty massive return. But I mean, you're talking about a long shot gamble, and we're not cutting funding to that. But to your point, and we are on the same page, I think, with this. We're cutting protections, not just funding, but protections to the national park. I don't have the article pulled up. I thought I did, or actually the bill pulled up. But there was also, in the midst of all of these firings, a bill that was passed that essentially allows our federal government to explore these national parks as opportunities for mining for resources and fuel, gas, natural oil, which is my concern. I think that what this is all about is belittling the value of the national park system so that we can consider drilling them for oil. Because if you remember, drill, 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 that's what we want to do. We want to mine them for resources. We want to mine them for minerals, and we want to drill there. And these are places that absolutely will be devastated by those, to the point where the article that I've got pulled up now says, who's buying up land around Joshua Tree National Park and why? In 2021, a mysterious real estate investment firm started buying up desert land within Joshua Tree National Park. Fast forward to now, and the group has acquired more than 100 acres in and around Whispering Pines in unincorporated San Bernardino County. But who are these stealthy buyers, and what do they plan to do with the mostly unspoiled land in one of the most popular parks in the U.S.? That's what it is. That's who benefits from this. So you're absolutely right. They want to cut it out and make it look and appear like we're doing it in the name of efficiency and the name of saving you some tax dollars, so that we will line the pockets of the wealthy, allowing them to tap into those parks for resources. And there are a number of things that I am personally pissed off about right now. This one has struck a chord because it's taken me a long time to get to the point in life where I can visit these parks and see them, especially the ones that are further away. And it's taken me a long time to get to the point in life where I appreciate them the way that I do. Yeah. I've taken up landscape photography lately. I've taken up bird photography lately, and I've found a deep appreciation for these places, which I've always had, but I've only been able to do from a distance. And now I've found myself with the ability to get into these places and to really appreciate them. And once you do that, you see that these aren't places that need oil rigs in them. They aren't places that need hotels in them. They aren't places that need to be strip mined and turned into massive pits, toxic pits, to mine for lithium or whatever other, valuable resource that we're looking out there. They just need to be preserved. Yep. They just need to sit there to remind us of why this planet is so beautiful, why this country is so beautiful. We can go without some natural resources to have that. That is a fair and equitable trade-off. And if you're just going to boil it all down to money, they are returning that value to us, 15-to-1, as they stated. So it's not like the trade-off is we get nothing at all from these places. and we miss out on natural resources. We miss out on natural resources, and we get places that make us proud and happy to live here, that give us places to recreate and appreciate this beautiful land. And they have a financial return. I mean, that's just a fact of the matter. If all you care about is finances and you're not an outdoor person, you don't care about that, then at least look at the amount of financial return that these places have to the federal government and to the local communities.
Yeah. Yeah, so, it's so much bigger. And, you know, whenever profit over people is on, when those cards are on the table, lives are at risk, right? Like individuals' ability to feel safe and to feel protected going into these places, right, and to be educated on how to conduct yourself in these spaces is very important. When you have people that end up missing in these state parks, you know, those are some of the same, those rangers are the right people that go out there, and people get missing all the time at state parks.
And it's going to happen more if there's nobody there to tell them which trails to stay off of.
Well, sure. As well as, you know, what does trespassing look like now at some of these sites as well. And, you know, especially when you have a bunch of young kids like we were at one point of time that are willing to push the limit and see what they can see. You know, if you don't have anyone governing these things, then it just makes a terrible recipe, of course. But, you know, this is, as it relates to Hometown Chronicles USA, like this is not just where we're at locally, you know, this is a countrywide issue that's happening. And just like in other areas, whether it's education, whether it's in healthcare or any other areas in life that people are very passionate about, you know, human rights, civil rights, we also have to look at the rights of Mother Nature as well. And things can be overgrown, trails can be trashed, animals can be harmed. This could really snowball into something that we just won't be able to imagine with what is transpiring, right? And so when you cut that many full-time workers and then you only pay seasonal workers, that means you're able to not have to pay insurance, right? So there's that trimming the quote unquote fat that's there. But again, at what human costs are you also implying as it relates to your mission with the safety of people that would like to attend these parks, or just the education that they're able to get? You know, when I go to these parks, there's things that I don't know, that this type of species of butterflies or that. And so I need the rangers or the educational piece to be able to not only educate me, but educate the kids and everyone else that's in attendance. And so these things are so important.
Yeah, and that education even extends to the fact that myself included, all of us, we go out to these natural spaces and we are ignorant, right? And I don't mean that in a negative term. I'm not pointing my finger and saying you're an ignorant person or you're an ignorant person. We are all ignorant in the sense that, you know, there was a time where I didn't realize that just walking on a certain type of plant would endanger that plant's existence. You know, they grow where they can and they grow where they need to. And by going off trail, you're putting that growth at risk, right? Just simple things like that, where this ecosystem might not even look the same if people don't stay on the trail. I have been ignorant to that. So many people have been ignorant to that. It's not something that we should feel bad about, but it's something we should be aware of. And park rangers are there to make us aware of those things. I found this article. It says these 13 national monuments, which, you know, just to clarify a little bit, there's national parks, which are the big, you know, ones, Yosemite, Yellowstone, you know, the ones that you think about, that you see in movies and you hear things about. There's national monuments, there's national forests. The national or the federal government owns a lot of public land, and they preserve and they conserve it in different ways. North Carolina has a lot of national forests, I think, monuments and things. I don't know like by detail, but as Murph mentioned earlier, there's a number of federal public land here that's available here in North Carolina. This says these 13 national monuments may be at risk of losing federal protections, advocates warn. The Department of Interior is exploring ways to use federal lands for energy production. Exactly what I was talking about. And national park advocates worry that could put some park sites at risk, citing an executive order by President Donald Trump encouraging energy exploration and production on federal lands and waters. Interior Secretary Doug Burgum ordered the department's assistant secretaries to review current oil, gas, and mining on public land and submit an action plan this month on ways to reduce barriers to use of the federal lands for energy development. Offer more parcels of the public land for oil and gas leasing within the limits of existing law and more. Everything's on the table till they take it off the table. And they didn't take anything off the table here.
It's off the
says Kristen Bringle, Senior Vice President of Government Affairs for the National Parks Conservation Association. I think that's the same person we quoted earlier.
Yeah.
An independent organization dedicated to protecting and enhancing the national park system. So that's exactly what I'm talking about. There's an executive order that's coming out that's being signed. They want to mine and drill for oil and on public land, and we should not stand and allow that. We just shouldn't. There is no amount of vehicles to fuel that is worth what we will lose. Those places will never come back. No. They will be gone forever. They are non-renewable resources. We are destroying non-renewable natural resources to drill for non-renewable resources. We really need to be focusing on other ways to power our society that don't require us to destroy the most beautiful natural resources that we have.
That allow us the opportunity to breathe, right? That
and once
us
again,
the opportunity to
provide a financial return.
Yes, and to do that.
These places aren't just sitting there doing nothing. They provide a financial return.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, it's definitely frustrating, and so in closing, what I want everyone to really consider doing right now is to
nature's on our side.
Nature's on our side. I hear it, right? But to try to visit these parks, be patient with the staff that's there, be empathetic to those individuals, just as you would seeing anyone else out in other fields that are struggling, right? Like these individuals are so vital. They're just not greeters at Walmart that waves and says hello, right? There's so much more than that. And so be intentional, hopefully this year with your travel schedules and your vacations to attend some of these state parks, because it's going to be very important, and voice your concerns. I know Cal and I, obviously we're doing this podcast, but we also plan on standing up and speaking to the things that matter for not only us, but other North Carolinians. And that's what's going to be very important, that we really start kind of like these grassroots efforts, in which there has already been plenty. I've been involved working with some, Cal has as well. But it's just so important that we really lean more into these and be an additional resource, an additional voice that helps deliver a message that says that we're not happy about X, Y, and Z. We're not happy about that our tax dollars that went towards X, this or that is now being taken away and funded for something else that we have no earthly idea on where it's going. And so that's just what I want to offer up, as we kind of close out here, is that please visit these national parks. You will, if you've never visited one before, trust me, you will learn something new at a national park, whether it's history, whether, just so many different things. They're so diverse.
And I want to add to that, support the local communities and visit the parks unless they ask you not to, and then stay away. Sometimes these parks need space. Yeah. They do not need to be overrun by people. If there is a limit on the number of people that get in the park, respect it. Mm-hmm. It's a bummer to pay all the money to go out to California just to be told, sorry, Yosemite's at capacity for the day, and have to go find something else to do. But guess what? The communities surrounding these parks are amazing.
Yeah, they are.
There's all sorts of mining towns. Mariposa is really cool in California. There are tons of places where you can go and you can spend time and money and still see some of the natural resources without overwhelming the parks. So just listen to what the Park Service says and respect it. If they ask you not to go off trail, don't go off trail. It doesn't matter if you see a bear that you want to go get a closer look at.
Right.
Don't do it. They know what's best for these parks.
Yeah, most definitely. And so that is that's our message for today, is just it's just so important that we visit these sites and that we support them. And there's this quote by J. Horace McFarland, and he says, "These parks are the nation's pleasure grounds and the nation's restoring places. These national parks are an American idea. It's one thing that we have that has not been imported." And I think that that is just such an amazing thing, right?
Absolutely.
This is something that has not been imported. This is natural indigenous beauty that's here. And I'm hoping that this haphazard way of doing things, governing certain entities here in this country, comes to an end sooner than later. But it's going to take our voices and your voices to make that happen, so we can protect, preserve, and conserve these beautiful places that Cal and I, and I'm sure plenty of you that are listening, love to call a home away from home.
That's right. Find something you love and believe in and protect it and preserve it.
There you go.
We'll catch you on the next one.
All right, y'all. Have a good one. Peace.
All right. See you guys later. Thanks for joining us again on Hometown Chronicles USA. If you love this episode, be sure to check out our YouTube channel and social media. Subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, or anywhere you get your podcasts. Show notes and all things Hometown Chronicles USA can be found at our website, www.hometownchroniclesusa.com.